Hi, this is Bernie with Connections Consulting, Connections Group of Companies, and I'm a business consultant. Business consultants get paid to think, and they get paid to speak. And last week I told you that I was going to come and resolve to put in 6 strategies into the ECOS out here to float around for whoever to grab, and maybe the government or some of our economies or economy specialists can use them in the business realm. But I think as a Canadian, I have a vested interest in this realm of wanting to put forth some income. This is income for me to give to this planet in our Canadian way. We already have a Canadian regard out there. We're a humanitarian all over the world for years, cleaning up after wars, way back before my father or grandfather's time, or even Justin Trudeau for that matter. And it's a broken economy right now, but we got to get through COVID. And maybe if the government wanted to use some of these ideas and even hire me on a business consultant side, I'd get in there maybe and tear some things up and restructure a bit of a new government order. But the government, it's not the government structure that's so bad necessarily. It's sometimes certain people that hold office, and are they competent or inept is always a question. Well, we the people voted them in. And then how much administration do they see, and can it function purportedly anywhere near private business in terms of capacity and capability? Well, right now we're seeing some of these guys really rise up and lead in our times of struggle with COVID and the economic struggle of it all. And we need to see this to continue. We need strength in our economy and in our people. I pray for that for people in my Good Samaritan pro ethical side of my company that's humanitarian. And well, my whole company's ethical, but that's my side where I promote it and push it in more of a humane, humanitarian body, mind, and spirit element in personal leadership. And like one of the ancient history wisdom scriptures that I keep thinking of and often pray for all you guys in the economy, myself as well, business leaders, family leaders, I suppose, as well, and the government specialists helping out in all these positions in our economy right now, getting the money forth to people that need it, like myself, whoever, businesses, structure, people, individuals, employees, students, all of it. And agriculture. So, it's in Luke 2:52, it says, I pray for you that you will increase and grow in wisdom and stature and favor with man and God. Now, that's my prayer daily, almost daily, for all these people involved I just mentioned, myself included. We all need it right now. In these times, these aren't wise times necessarily, but we can be wise people. Whoever adopts that belief from the ancient wisdom that CCI Connections Consulting teaches, I suppose, with ancient principles, and then combine that with modern innovation, how to use it and apply it in our modern day realm we live. So we're in 2020, but here's 6 ways, and I think they deserve the best of attention. I kind of say this jokingly sometimes, that maybe billionaires should buy our economy off. Like that joke I made about Jeff Bezos last week. Well, what would happen if you put a corporate structure into place? I mean, you converted our public domain into and privatized it like a publicly traded company. You could have a charter of rights like a publicly traded company would, I suppose, answer to a board of directors, like a government, like we have now, I suppose, but all backed by private billionaires, and there's many around the world. Like 3% of the people own 97% of the world in its total wealth. So that's a huge chunk. And you could have these investor billionaires own Canada like a company instead of a country. But would it work? Well, it might not. Look at what we've done so far. You billionaires, this is for you, honestly. From a couple decades ago, since globalization set, I suppose, margins went down in a lot of companies from about usually the mid 30s was a good margin on any product or service type. And competing in a world market, most companies are lucky to make 4% margin anymore. And that's just reality. Lots are shuffling around at 2%. Many are making zero and going broke. And yeah, the rich get richer, but at what expense? And in the real world I live in, body count and head count in the last 20 to 25 years, maybe even pushing 30 by now. I'm a little older than expected, maybe. But, you know, body count and head count are just terms. Well, let's get some bodies in there. You know, use that up. Use that dwelling up there, that thing up, until we get our money's worth out of it. You know, what's our head count? We need to cut our head count. Doesn't matter. Just cut off 10% of the head count this year. I've been in these meetings. I've been on the management side in the corporate world. I know how it works. I've been on both sides. The structure meeting on the inside where you cut people, and on the outside where the cutting's happening, and you're in the fold of that part of it too. So I understand this. Now the church world, and I'm studying into ancient history here with these words, I'm purporting what I have studied foolishly? No. Quite an equity of wisdom as I dug into these words of ancient history. The biblical overview of Jesus, I suppose, some of the ancient wisdom of the Old Testament, what God did in the earth and instituted, what man did or didn't do, learning from the mistakes of few, some, many, I suppose, the plagues of the past and time, like we're in with COVID now, all of it. And then the things people did right and how successful they were, and how God set the sun and rose on good and evil men both alike. And God allowed evil to happen. He's not in charge. He's not the maker of evil, but he allowed it. And so sometimes evil men and beings rise up and do things, and God allows that for his greater purposes. His will is that none of us should perish for eternity. So there's days like these, many of us are brought to our knees to say, what's next? What can I do? And so when I look at this, and I look at the billionaires and the companies and the big corporations, and I am part of them, I am one of them, and I'm creating a mammoth world organization right now and pushing forth in my 30-year business plan, operating in year 4. And we're going forward in it. I believe in big business. But the purpose and the purporting I'm saying here is the church in the ancient scriptures, the purpose of them is much like what government tries to attribute to. You got to take care of people. And it can't just always be profit and head count and getting rid of people. You know, it's helping people when they need it. And that is the compassion and the love of and the kindness of the church. I'm talking globally in the ancient scriptures. You know, the church buildings of nowadays can be institutionalized, and they don't always function necessarily often like the scriptures tell you, but they're trying their best, I propose. Many of them, some of them, a few of them, I've picked my spots where I like to go and visit and be part of. And as long as people are trying their best, that's better than nothing, or the opposite, isn't it? So that's where I go with that. And the government in that realm is trying that as well, because the government is there for the people. They're trying to propose and support to the people. But like a business, so they're handing out money, emergency benefits in times of these. But, and that's the need, and it's real. But like a business, they have to somehow figure out a way to balance their budget too, right? Because you can't keep churning off a printing press money. In the old days, it was the crown jewels that the castle and the kingdom had in their hand, or their equity, or their pleasure, right? And that's how you generated your economy. Well, then, as modern day business has taken off, I suppose we've moved more into the era of gross domestic product, what its measured and worth is internally in our Canadian borders for our country's use, for what I'm saying for the sake of that. And a conglomeration of crown corporations when that world was more existed than it is now, because many crown corporations owned by the government have been sold off through the years to private equity business. So it's more a factor of your gross domestic product, your GDP, the value of your dollar as it interchanges in the world with the United States and other places, and the Bank of Canada helps set that, and the lending rates. But the money is based on actual worth of our economy. So we need to balance our budget, and we need to have an equitable economy. So here's my 6 proposed ideas. Number 1 is a managed and structured immigration approach. And I've always said that we can't just keep inviting people to come to our country if the jobs and the economy don't supposedly support them. So what I mean by managed is turn the tap on and off. Turn it on, turn it right off if you have to for a period of time. Well, I'd say we're in those times now. We better not hear another immigration story for a while, right? But as it grows and unemployment declines to the point where job and business demand is outpacing available workers, crank it up, get them back in. We were in that 15 to 20 years ago. There was like a shortage of labor in Alberta, and I remember it because I had just come back to Alberta for the second time right around the early 2000s, and there was a huge push to get people in from the Philippines because they were wanting to get out, many of them, for opportunity. And all of a sudden, like, there was a shortage, and here's an example. There was a shortage of workers, and fast food places like McDonald's were paying kids living at home $18 an hour just to get them to come work because there was a shortage. And then all of a sudden, immigration took fold and more people came in, and it went back down to minimum wage, you know, where the economy was purported and held up. And at that time, it was probably, I don't know, $10 an hour, I forget. But, you know, reasonable when you're living at home as a student 20 years ago, I suppose. But point is, we needed people, so we immigrated well at that time. The oil patch, small rural communities around Western Canada. But then it got overexposed in these last 5 years, didn't it, I suppose, because the economy started to suffer. We were on the edges of recession, you know, 5 and 4 years out beyond the 3-year mark, and then it was starting to trend slowly, like it was coming back better again in the 3rd and 4th year from 5 years ago, and then we crashed into COVID here. But so managed immigration, and you know, with more jobs at the right times, and this is a long-term approach. More jobs at the right times, more income, so then your tax increases proportionally as more income is being earned in more people's lives, over more people's lives. But this plan, this 6 strategies I'm saying here and suggesting forth and proposing is not based on any tax increases. We're paying enough personal income tax as it is. Nobody wants to pay more. So if we're looking at potentially a $280 billion deficit on this budget year, because Justin Trudeau is handing out more to farmers today, it was only in the millions, not $9 billion like the students. I think I heard 125 million. I'll have to quote that tomorrow. But so, you know, farmers aren't in a bad case right now. That's just to patch a few things up as long as they get the crop in and go forward. And commodity prices are doing well, and input prices are suggested as being wherever the market is saying they are, you know, but he's going to help, so he's put something forth. And so let's say it does go up to balloons, up to 280 billion. Well, this is proposing, because if Jeff Bezos can have a $28 billion bump in 1 month, there's no reason why Canada can't pay down 10% of its current 2020 year deficit, 10% chunk at a time over a 10-year period, and nobody would have to have any loss personally with increase in taxes. So managed immigration, number 1. Number 2, foreign investment in our country. So what that means when I say that is, you need business to come here and relocate here. There's billionaires and there's millionaires all over the world, and some of them live in tyrannical countries. And much like Hong Kong back in the 90s was trying to get their money out and into other countries as the status of their government was changing at that time, and their regime was making it not conducive to people's family money staying. So many people moved to Vancouver to start with in Canada, and that's when real estate prices started to go up and all that. Get more foreign investment money into Canada. That's number 2. And when I say that, bring the people. So for example, go into places like China, India, and Japan where they're overpopulated. Ambassadors, social business coordinators of Canada government employees, and private business contractors like myself, consultants, go along and attract business investment here. And do that by having them in regard, bring the people. So if you go into Japan and a major Japanese automaker is enticed to come relocate in the corridor between Calgary and Edmonton or Saskatoon and Regina and set up their huge manufacturing plant, or a high-tech firm from India, I suppose, or a teacup manufacturer from China or something, telemarketing or whatever, bring the people too. So come build the business, but bring the people. So you're having tax revenue on the business, but the people, you're also adding people into the economy because you brought the jobs here too with the people. So it wasn't taking away from our current employment situation or economy of longer time Canadians, but you're adding more people with the new job demand. So that's number 2, foreign investment. That's an example right there. That's a good one. And entice them here. You know, there's freedom here. There's opportunity here. The moral and ethical value of our country is very free still. And, you know, they might have high land and real estate values and taxes compared to us. So there's opportunities to bring them here, and we don't have to give away the boat or the farm to do it. It's just an economical, freer way of life. You know, but sometimes you pay incentives as well to get them over, but you do it because you got a managed 10-year plan, a proposed revenue attached to it. It's a written plan. It's not fly by the seat of your pants and forget, why did we do that? So that's a document. It becomes a manifest and an agreement that people live up to and keep. Okay, number 3 would be temporary oil tariffs. In this world glut we see right now, and I know everybody was mad at Donald Trump 3 years ago when he started to institute the steel tariffs in the States, but you can see now when the turn is on the other foot. Alberta, and where's oil today? It was down to like $3 a barrel not long ago. And I didn't have the news on much today, and I could only catch a little update from Saskatchewan and Nova Scotia when I was around. But so I didn't see it. But, you know, before I got on here talking, but like our oil prices are reflecting a world glut. Well, let's keep some of the world glut out temporarily. There's no reason why, and we can use up our own domestic products. If people have a hard time getting food, they will resort to growing their own garden again, when we haven't done that, many of us, for a lot of years. Maybe we need to shut off the borders, and that's what I'm proposing, a temporary oil tariff to keep oil out. We're an export nation primarily, so let's use up all our internal stuff and keep, you know, because we get the excise tax and all the different tax levels, and make sure that we're not getting any coming in where there's purchases going outside of the country to buy cheaper oil, and it's showing up in our pumps at our gas station in downtown Strathmore or at the Shell or wherever, when normally that company would produce economically, and there'd be gas stations buying locally off the manufacturers here, and that would be revenue our own government would be achieving. So that's number 3. Number 4 is enhanced food exports. And what I mean by that, we're always selling as a country food agencies are selling food, grain, raw products and commodities out into the world market. Whoever needs them. We're competing into countries like Poland and Japan and China and Ukraine and wherever. We're selling grain, what we don't use domestically and produce into bread loaves and French fries and stuff internally in Canada. We're selling the grain offshore, canola, I suppose, to Japan to make canola cooking oil, all of that, right? Oats to the oats millers for bread and horse racing and all that. So lots of it goes out off continent by rail or truck or by ship on each of our coasts, a lot off the west coast. So when I say enhance food exports beyond that, what I mean is let's do a deeper depth into these third and moderate developed countries where we are sending agriculture people over to teach, and let's get a vested interest for long term for revenue. I mean, it's one thing to give to the poor and feed the hungry, and that is equitable in the long-term effect of helping poor people in poverty. But when you go to step 2 into teaching them how to get up and get sustainable themselves, then we need some equity back. Like, let's sign some teaching and training contracts and get some revenue into the government of Canada by long-term agreements, because it doesn't happen overnight. When you go into a arid place and they don't have good farming practices, they don't have good agriculture input scenarios, all that has a long-term play, and we can sign 10-year contracts and make revenue back. And this is offsetting our 10-year paydown scheme of a potentially ballooning $280 billion deficit this year. So that's number 4, enhance food exports on the countries that need to come up and increase. Because if we're going to feed a 9 billion population world by 2040, only 20 years down the road, and we need a 30% increase in food, it isn't the North America per se, Europe, Australia, that's going to produce it necessarily, because we've really increased over the years. We may still continue to increase as we discover enhanced and increased genetics and science and so forth, but some of the big gains are going to be in countries that haven't performed at all. Like, there's been huge acres plowed over in the Ukraine, good land, but they just haven't had the ways. They've been a broke country, so you help broken people become fixed, right? So that's where we're at, and Canada is good at that. We're humanitarian. We always have been, right? So get some long-term contracts there that produce revenue for us over a 10-year period to start. That's number 4. Number 5, we have one of the only few in the world right in our backyard, in the Badlands in Alberta, I suppose, the tyrannical dinosaur museum at Drumheller. Well, it's starting to become world famous, but as people developed history buff attitude, and I'm a May, okay, so I've studied my history of my family back through time, history, and I got a cousin on the other farm side. The May was the agri-retailer business-to-business side, business-to-business marketing. On the Goldsmith Mackay side was the farm side, and we've studied our history back, and the word May, M-A-Y, means kinsman redeemer. Well, that's a kinsman redeemer is someone who helps restore, bring back into order what once was, and make it better again when it's fallen out of shape, and when it needs fixing. Perfect to be a business consultant. You'll often find, if you know any of us in our May clan from anywhere around the world, there's often somebody that's a gatherer trying to get the family together or bring friends together, and it's just the name itself means restorer. So why not, when people want to come and study ancient history, what better place than to bring them in to Drumheller and offer incentives to come do that, so as they come and set up here and become part of our economy in their studies and enhancing that whole ecological side and develop further business in the education side around our planet, going out and reaching, so the education grows here, with the people involved in it, invested in it, that becomes an income of its own. So that's another idea. That's just a local little idea, but it is a world planetarium. It's amazing. You should go visit it. The kids and you will learn something about it. I don't agree with the time of when the dinosaurs existed, compared to how old the Earth is, but that's my view and what I've studied in the ancient wisdom and the history and but they did exist. You can't dispute that. It's true. It's evident in certain scriptural passages, but the bones, have been discovered. So very, very good clue there. Now, the last one, and the point number 6, is going back to the farm again. And it's in these end times we're in, you see, and like my good friend out in Saskatchewan there, she's got one kid, and they have a little farm kind of visit place where people can tour, and they got a barn bunkhouse scenario, and you can stay over kind of like a bed and breakfast scenario. Well, I think more and more people want these remote, quiet locations to stop and have a rest and visit, and a meal in the morning, breakfast, even if it's just a piece of toast and marmalade and a coffee, whatever, but go on their journey as they holiday. And tourism has always been a growing thing. And when you can come out to Banff or tour the Al Capone cave tunnels in Moose Jaw, and then head out to Saskatchewan to go see the synchrotron and the famous U of S, and go down to Regina and catch a Rider Pride game on your way out, and make this prairie loop, and maybe tour into Winnipeg and see the grain exchange, and go downtown to the Forks. It's a good prairie visit, and it's an adventure up to Edmonton and see the West Edmonton Mall and the Gretzky statue and all that. And so there's lots to do, but these farms, I believe the government should make it incenting to them where they want to restore the heritage between land and food and people in the city and commerce, because the more we grow into our future and our distant future off beyond today as we get through COVID, and who knows when Christ will return. I've always said that on the believing side of the Good Samaritan pro-humanitarian side of our company. We don't know, so we always got to be vested and pointing for the future horizon long term too. And so the farm and its importance is huge, because through centuries, we've drifted further away from agrarian ecology and society into commercialized city, urban structure. And so with that, people lose touch with the food system, and it's hard. And through the years, people are guessing about what's really going on, and they don't totally understand it. And when crisis happens and the food shelves start to go dry and you don't really understand, well, in the good times, nobody needs the restrictions put on their shoulders that don't make sense either. And I've seen it all, folks, and it hasn't been easy. And farmers have to always be fighting a voice upward, because there's like this oppression or pressure down on them of a lack of understanding. And then sometimes they just want to put the crop in and grow you your food so you can eat and not have to be doing all this bureaucratic stuff. And there's a propaganda machine that just never ends, and it isn't always wise. Jeff Bezos, this is for you too, because I know you're putting money towards food education and wise climate stuff. And man, just be careful you get the right people and the right message. That's all I'm saying. Because I believe in all of it, the whole earth, everything, the whole bit of everything. Faith, science, the earth, the land, urban renewal, space, all of it. I believe in all of it. And we have to do well. We have to be good stewards of it all. So, go with that. And any grants that can help incentivize these smaller farm businesses who want to take on the tourist side, I think it's a good economy and it's productive. And nobody's going to lose because in modern times, more and more people travel, and hotel chains aren't going to suffer. I mean, it's been a growth industry for years, and we've seen more and more airplanes in the sky and all that. So go with that. That's my 6 strategies. No tax increases, pay down a potentially ballooning $280 billion Canadian deficit in 10 years, 10% at a time. And, I don't think that privatizing the country of Canada with billionaire investors and a government board would be equitable, but maybe one of you guys out there is smarter than me, and maybe that economy could happen. I doubt it. It wouldn't make sense, but I guess if you look at anything, and if the Charter of Rights had good moral construct in it that couldn't be destroyed, even if you did get a bad egg in the crop on the board of directors or in the government leadership of it, and investors, as long as the moral construct of the Charter of Rights, maybe have a look at it. But geez, guys, I know all you corporate leaders and billionaires and even the good companies, like, they grow year after year. I think of one of the oil companies here in Calgary has produced 20% equity growth every year and buying out other mid companies and stuff. And there's guys that have done good. But overall, the economy has suffered through globalization. And I guess what it comes back to, it's not just supply and demand and the economics of the economy, it's price cutting, so margins suffer, because when a business person wants to purchase goods and services, they just want a price they consider fair, and you as a service provider or corporation have to be willing to sell it to them at a price they think is fair. Well, in the old days, when I was a kid and in my early youth, in my 20s, men of those days, people knew how to stand their ground. And why was that? And they would argue and haggle out a good price that was fair on both sides, so that a regional company was making 32% margin on a bag of seed or something, and now people can't even make 2%. Well, why is that? Maybe it has something to do with our times, and maybe we need to get back to our ancient roots and the wisdom of it. It doesn't mean lose your culture and all the good things you have and the clothes you wear and the enjoyable things you do and the technology and the life. Enjoy your modern day stuff, but those men in those days when I was a kid were more apt and in tune with living in the